I have never used the lapel mic, so I'm using this awesome hand one. It's great. Andy, you have a ton of energy, so you could have just preached a sermon and we would have been great. No need to have me up here. Like Andy said and Pastor Eric said, my name is Alex Rosinger. I'm joined by my wife, Katie, and then our son is in the nursery. So we trust you guys because he's not in our arms right now. So obviously we're excited to be here. It is really an honor to be at Creekside this morning for many reasons. And if you're joining us online, we are excited that you are here too. First is that this is the first Sunday of 2021. Like, this is a big deal. Like, we made it through 2020, and so thankfully, like, I don't know how or why, but I got the honor to be up here on the first Sunday of 2021, and so I have an encouraging message for you guys, and so hopefully you guys are uplifted by it. But also, Katie and I, we are part of Chi Alpha, and so what Chi Alpha is, it's a campus ministry, a spirit-filled ministry. It's actually affiliated through the Assemblies of God, and we exist on hundreds of different campuses across the nation, and so yes, there's one at Ohio State, but there's also one at Iowa State University, which is where Katie and I are from. We live in Ames, which is an incredible town. And both of our lives are transformed. Mine as a freshman, Katie's as a sophomore. While we were going to Iowa State University, we got baptized in the Holy Spirit and really propelled and sent out to be Christ's ambassadors, which is what Chi Alpha stands for. Christ's ambassadors in the marketplace, in the campus, and in the world. And so that's kind of our little tagline in Chi Alpha. So we love Chi Alpha. We've given our lives to it. A little bit about us. So Katie and I, we both grew up we're both pastors' kids. We grew up in pastors' homes. Katie settled, her family settled on the east side of Des Moines, a little bit out there in a place called Colfax, where her parents are still serving today. My family, we grew up moving around every so often. Every 3 to 4 years we'd move. But we are originally from Minnesota, and then I graduated from a town in northwest Iowa. So Iowa's a very significant place for me because I graduated high school from here and then ended up going to Iowa State, where freshman year I encountered Jesus and Chi Alpha for the very first time, which is why I'm like so pumped for Eric and Josiah to make this big moment of Josiah leaving the home. Even though it's not fun to empty nest, like for me as a follower of Jesus, as a man of God, that first semester away was the most transformational and positive thing that's ever happened to me. And I did it at a secular university. You know, everyone talks about the universities. Everyone's going to hell there. Like, this is a place where people go to party and get drunk. And parts of that are true. But I have a good report for you this morning, is that God is on the move on the campus, on the secular campus. There is such good soil in the hearts of our young people. Like, I'm so stirred up and so excited by what God wants to do in their hearts. They have not known what truth is. They have no idea what hope is. They've been locked in their homes for months at a time. And when they hear truth, their ears perk up and their hearts start to quicken because they want to encounter Jesus. And so it's hard to get to know people in the COVID season. But those who do come in the doors, we've seen them respond to the gospel. We've seen them get physically healed and people get baptized in the Holy Spirit. It's been an incredible semester so far. Again, Katie and I, we are Iowa State alums, so you can throw that picture up there. There's one of me and Katie. We're standing with a group of people who have our graduation hats on. That one. So Katie and I, this is us standing outside of Jack Trice Stadium. So maybe Pastor Eric can't become a Hawkeye, but he probably could become a Cyclone because we're Big 12. We had a great day yesterday. Iowa State did. We won the Fiesta Bowl. This is the best. I as an alum, we've never had a better year for football, and it's the only year we couldn't go to a game. So that's all right. Maybe next year. Hopefully it's not a whiff. So Katie and I, we graduated from Iowa State together. We didn't get married right away. We actually didn't even start dating until a year after college. I moved to Minnesota, and I dated a few girls, and I was like, man, there's no one as good as Katie. So I called her up, and she let me take her on a date, and we got married. And then the next picture I want to show really quick before we jump into the message is this is our group, Chi Alpha Iowa State, from this fall. We are incredibly blessed. We, like many people know that church attendance is 35% of what used to be pre-COVID. Like many ministries are in free fall. And Iowa State, we haven't blown up, but we've experienced a slow and steady growth and a deep work. And so we actually were able to have a fall retreat, which most campuses couldn't do this year. So we were at Sunstream Retreat Center there, which is in over by Boone, Iowa. And we had an incredible time. A student got baptized in physical water. We had several students get baptized in the Holy Spirit. And then literally the next Wednesday afterward, one of the students who he'd experienced baptism in the Holy Spirit, but had not yet stepped out in the gift of speaking in tongues, I was with him in my office, and we prayed, and he received the gift of tongues right in front of me. I mean, it was just like wild stuff. So exciting, so much fun. So there's a good report from the secular campus from Iowa State University, and we're so excited to be there. And we, if you guys didn't know, Creekside sows financially into that ministry. You guys support Chi Alpha Iowa State, so we want to thank you. Hopefully this morning is a blessing to you in terms of you guys can see and hear what's happening there. Chi Alpha workers, we serve a community of people who they can't like financially support us. You know, when you start a church, people eventually start tithing and giving back. No one can do that at Iowa State at universities, because if they tithed off what they made, I would owe them money, and so because they're going in the hole every year, so it doesn't make any sense. So we have to gather support from different churches and individuals that are passionate about what God is doing at Iowa State and at the university, so we can have a budget, so we can be there, we can physically stay there full time. And so thank you so much for investing in what God's doing at Chi Alpha. We really, really appreciate it. So I'm going to pray, and then we're going to jump into what I believe, hopefully, God has for us this morning. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you so much for this incredible new year of 2021. God, that we get to stand here in one piece coming from 2020. And Lord, we are so thankful for everything you did. Even though 2020 is marked by strangeness and oddities, God, we thank you for your faithfulness in it all and your goodness in it all. Never have you ever been more good than the year 2020. God, we thank you so much just how you provided so many ways in 2020. We thank you that's going to increase even more so in 2021. Lord, we pray, I pray a blessing over this church. God, would you continue to grow it? God, would you continue to bless it? Lord, we pray a blessing over the Shawls as they make this life transition of Josiah moving out of the house and going to university. Lord, we pray this would be his best semester ever of school. Lord, he would deeply encounter you in a unique way outside of his parents' home, where his faith is made his own. And Lord, that he grow into a mature man of God. God, I thank you for the power that you're going to unleash upon his life. Lord, we thank you for this morning. Would you speak to us through your word? In Jesus' name, amen. Cool. So, like I said, I'm from Minnesota. I'm a pastor's kid. We grew up moving around. But if I had to say what home was for me, where I would like say my place of origin from is from Minnesota. And so, if you hear me, if you hear the accent come out when I say boots or Minnesota or big or I suppose, that's just like my natural like heritage coming out. It's not because I talk funny. It's just the way I was born. So please don't make fun of me, because it happens a lot at Iowa State. But so Minnesota it's my home. And when I was a sophomore, coming out of my freshman year of high school, my parents made the decision to move from Minnesota to Northwest Iowa. My dad was going to be a pastor of a small town church there. There was 26 people, really small church. It was really a revitalization attempt. And my dad went, and along the journey, we joined him as well. And then along the journey, he invited a friend with him as well. He was a very talented musician and kind of raw and fresh to ministry, but my dad invited him to come with. And so he came, and he was the worship pastor and also the youth pastor while my dad was there and while we were there. And he was amazing. He blessed our church. His name was Joe. He blessed our church so much. Like in terms of men outside of my dad's household in high school, or outside of my household in high school, he was the guy who was like pouring into my life the most. But he kind of had a quirk. Everyone has quirks. Everyone has oddities. And Katie could tell you plenty of mine. I have lots. But his oddity, his quirk was when he moved to Iowa. We were Northwest Iowa. He kept talking about how good Minnesota was. Like, those people, like he kept talking about how good Minnesota was. He kept calling it the promised land. And I'm from Minnesota. And so like, yeah, Minnesota's cool. That's great. Lots of lakes up there. But he kept talking about it over and over again. And he eventually started calling it the promised land. He would call it the promised land. He'd make jokes about how you need to take off his shoes when you get home and all of these things. And eventually, like, bro, I get Minnesota's cool, but you're in Iowa. Like, enjoy where you're at. We're 8 miles from the border. We're really northern Iowa. You can drive across there to get a breath of fresh air if you need to, but you're in Iowa. Enjoy where you're at. This is a good place. And we loved having Joe there, but eventually, a couple years later, he moved on. He went back to Minnesota. He had a different opportunity. And at the same time, I went to Iowa State University, and my parents stayed in Estherville, which is where I was from, for about another year and a half. And for that year and a half, things went really, really well for them. But during that year and a half, they had a longing and a yearning to go back home, to be near family, to go back to the promised land of Minnesota, which is where they're from. And so about a year and a half after I graduated and moved on to Iowa State, they had some incredible opportunities, really dream jobs and dream opportunities open up into Minnesota. And so me, as a sophomore in college, I got to observe them make this leap from northwestern Iowa, small town life, back to the big city of Minneapolis, to what they thought was the promised land. And unfortunately and tragically, I watched what was the worst year of their life unfold in front of me. What were these amazing opportunities, amazing dreams came crumbling down in front of them. And what they thought were different things they would be excited about being at home came up completely short and missed the mark in completely other ways. And so it was a bummer season. And I feel like many of us, we've had this, I call it the promised land mentality, where we put our hopes and our dreams in a future goal or a future reward. When we get there, we will be satisfied in some way. We will get there and we will have arrived. And I've done it too. When I graduated from Iowa State University, I went back to Minnesota. I had a full-time job as an engineer. I wasn't always a pastor. I wasn't always in Chi Alpha. And so I moved back there, and I was like, I'm going back to the promised land. I'm leaving Iowa, I'm going back to the promised land. I'm going to marry a girl up there. I'm going to marry a Minnesota girl. And I was tragically wrong. Iowa girl's where it's at, because I had to come back to Iowa to find my wife. But I moved up there, and I thought it was going to be the promised land. And unfortunately, it was one of the hardest years of my life. It was a great year, but one of the hardest years of my life. Many of us, we have this promised land mentality about a future goal or a future thing. When we arrive, we will get some sort of satisfaction. We all do this. We don't do it just with moving. We do it with the idea of a new job, or a new house, or if you're single, a new romantic relationship, or new friends, or even going to a new church. And we do this as communities too, as a church. We do this when we get a new pastor. We think, we've arrived. Or we get a new building. Or our church finally starts growing again. Or even when we finally experience the long sought after revival, we think we have arrived in the promised land. We do this even collectively as a society. Even like right now, even more so than ever, we promised land-esque the year 2021. With 2020 behind us, we're like, 2021, it's going to be utopia. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be amazing. We will have arrived. We do this, and bizarrely, we put our hope in this new year, a potential new set of political leaders, a new vaccine, and a new found of freedom once COVID requirements eventually start to lift. And that's why I consider it an incredible honor to stand before you here today on the beginnings of 2021 to talk to you about what our actual true promised land is as followers of Jesus. We're going to turn to a story in the Bible that illustrates this, I believe, so well. And before I move on a little bit more, I do want to give credit where credit's due. There's a man, some of you may have heard his name. His name is Dick Brogden. And I was reading a book called This Gospel, and it's a collection of sermons. And he had written a sermon called The Promised Land. And so many of the ideas are actually from him, and it stirred my heart so much. I took some of his content, I rewrote it to fit this morning. It's a fresh sermon. I've never preached it before. So that's what the kind of sneaky trick of pastors when they visit somewhere. They just will preach an old sermon. But this is a fresh sermon. But Dick Brogden, some of this came from him, so I want to give him credit. But we're going to turn to Exodus 17, verses 1 through 7. And we're picking up in the story of the Israelite nation. And where we're picking up is Moses is currently the leader of the Israelite nation. And Moses is that let my people go guy who always go to Pharaoh, let my people go, and then be some crazy plagues, and you go back over and over again. So Moses was the leader of the nation because after the 10th plague, the Egyptians let the Israelites out of captivity and to go back where they wanted to go, which was the promised land, the land of their ancestors. And as they were leaving Egypt decided to change its mind. Pharaoh changed its mind. They started pursuing them. And so the Israeli people got trapped between the Red Sea, and you guys, many of you know the story, between the Red Sea and the pursuing the Egyptian army. But God miraculously opened up the Red Sea. They marched right through on dry land. And then when the pursuing army tried to come, the Red Sea closed up on them. And God had been like miraculously providing over and over again for this nation, this chosen people, the nation of Israel. And so now we pick up in the story of where Moses is leading this people. Unfortunately, Israelites, they're a bunch of complainers. That's kind of what they do. And we all have a complaint in our life. They're just grumblers. They're kind of hard people to work with. And so they're in the wilderness. They get to a point when they're running out of water. And that's where we pick up the story in Exodus 17, verse 1. It says this: At the Lord's command, the whole community of Israel left the wilderness of Sinai and moved from place to place. Eventually, they camped at Rephidim, and there was no water there for the people to drink. So once more, the people complained against Moses. Once more, that means they've done it a lot. Give us water to drink, they demanded. Quiet, Moses replied. Why are you complaining against me? Why are you testing the Lord? But tormented by thirst, they continued to argue with Moses. Why did you bring us out of Egypt? Are you trying to kill us, our children, and our livestock? Then Moses cried out to the Lord, what should I do with these people? They are ready to stone me. Then the Lord said to Moses, walk out in the front of the people. Take your staff, the one you used to struck the water of the Nile, and call some of the elders of Israel to join you. I will stand before you on the rock at Mount Sinai. Strike the rock, and the water will come gushing out. Then the people will be able to drink. So Moses struck the rock as he was told, and water gushed out as the elders looked on. Moses named the place Massah, which means test, and Meribah, which means arguing, because the people of Israel argued with Moses and tested the Lord by saying, is the Lord here with us or not? So we see this really, really amazing miracle where Israel is in the wilderness. They're in a desert. They have nothing to drink. And so they go complaining to Moses. It's a bummer because this is a people group. They've experienced God's provision over and over and over again. And yet they don't believe in God. And so they start complaining to Moses to a point where he honestly becomes fearful for his life. So like a good man of faith, he runs to God and he asks God to do the impossible. And so God says, okay, go take your staff, strike the rock, and water will come out. And guess what? God does it. Amazing. Such an incredible miracle. Now, what I want us to do is I want us to look at the second time this happens. This happens a whole other time. They're in a different place, but almost the exact same set of circumstances, the exact same group of people, and the exact same leader, and the exact same God. And something different happens this time. So we're going to turn to Numbers 20, verses 1 through 13. Again, the environment is almost the exact same. So it says this in Numbers 20, verse 1. In the first month of the year, the whole community of Israel arrived in the wilderness of Zin and camped at Kadesh. While they were there, Miriam died and was buried. There was no water for the people to drink at that place. So they rebelled against Moses and Aaron. The people blamed Moses and said, "If we had only died in the Lord's presence with our brothers, why have you brought the congregation of the Lord's people into this wilderness to die, along with all of our livestock? Why did you make us leave Egypt and bring us here to this terrible place? This land has no grain, no figs, no grapes, no pomegranates, and no water to drink." Moses and Aaron turned away from the people and went to the entrance of the tabernacle, where they fell face down on the ground. Then the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord said to Moses, "You and Aaron must take the staff and assemble the entire community. And as the people watch, speak to the rock over there, and it will pour out its water. You will provide enough water from the rock to satisfy the whole community and their livestock." So Moses did as he was told. He took the staff from the place where it was kept before the Lord. Then he and Aaron summoned the people together to gather at the rock. "Listen, you rebels," he shouted. Sounds like he's mad. "Must we bring you water from this rock?" Then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with the staff, and the water gushed out. So the entire community and their livestock drank to their fill. But the Lord said to Moses, and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me enough to demonstrate my holiness to the people of Israel, you will not lead them into the land that I am giving them." So again, we see Moses, under the exact same set of circumstances, and Israel, under the exact same set of circumstances, start complaining about water again to Moses. And Moses, again, like a good man of faith, goes to the Lord. He gets on his face, it says, before the entrance of the tabernacle, and he asks God to do the impossible. And God gives him some instructions. He said, "Go do this, take the staff, speak to the rock, and water will pour out." So Moses, he starts to do almost everything perfectly except for the specifics of the execution of the miracle. Instead of when he got to the rock, instead of speaking to the rock, he struck it twice. And God still provided the miracle. Water still came out of the rock. But at the end of that scripture, it says that God turned to Moses and Aaron and said, "Because you do not trust me, you will not enter into the promised land." Ouch. Because he did not follow the words to the exact letter, he got the promised land, the hope and the dream of the promised land completely taken away from him. That has to sting a little bit. But what's strange is Scripture goes on to tell us that Moses continued to lead Israel for the next 20 years. This disobedient, rebellious, grumbling group of people, Moses continued to lead in the wilderness for 20 years with the entire hope of going into the promised land taken from him. And this brings me to my first observation from this story that I want to share with you, and I hope it blesses you as well. And it's this: our personal promised lands aren't that important. Our personal promised lands aren't that important. In light of an eternal, all-powerful God, our personal promised lands aren't that important. And if they really are that important, God can find someone else to enter into it for you. Like we talked about earlier, everyone has a promised land mentality or a promised land that they're working towards. For some of us, our promised lands are actually really good things. They're incredible hopes and dreams. And they can even be callings and desires that have been given to us by God specifically for us. We place our hopes in the promised land of getting a new promotion at work. We place our hopes in the promised land of getting married someday. We place our hope in the promised land of buying a house to raise a family in. We place our hope in the promised land of starting a nonprofit or a ministry to help people in need. We place our hope in the promised land of leading a friend or someone in our family to Jesus. We place our hope in the promised land of retirement. We place our hope in the promised land of being incredible grandparents one day. But again, our personal promised lands can be amazing, God-honoring things, yet they really aren't that important. And if they are, God can find someone else to do it or sovereignly do it himself. For me, my personal promised land for many years was entering into Chi Alpha ministry, to be a part of Chi Alpha. When I was a sophomore in college, I was studying biosystems engineering. And it's basically just a fancy way of saying environmental engineering. And so when I was a sophomore in college, I was studying this degree, but I knew God had called me into full-time vocational ministry. And hopefully, someday, Chi Alpha. But I knew I wasn't supposed to change my degree. And so I kept on going for the next 2.5 years, laboring through engineering school, which was very difficult. I don't know how I got through it. The Lord provided in many ways, many late nights. But then after that, I got a full-time job. I worked as an environmental engineer at an oil refinery in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area for 4 years. And during those 4 years, I paid off all of my student loans. I got married to Katie. I paid off her student loans. I got my master's degree. I started studying for ministry credentials. All the while hoping and placing my dreams into stepping in someday into full-time vocational ministry. And in 2019, I got a call from a pastor friend who had asked me to come down, asked Katie and I to come down to enter into full-time vocational ministry, my promised land. And in August of this last year, we are new just like the Shawls. August of this last year was our first time on campus as Chi Alpha workers, as the directors of Chi Alpha. And you know what? I still put my pants on the same way. Like, I am still very much the same person. And, it's been a dream come true. It's been so much fun. But at the end of the day, I have to realize that even if I didn't say yes, if I didn't give up my engineering degree or career or move from Minnesota to Iowa to uproot my family, God still would have found someone else. It didn't have to be me. And this was true for Moses. And if it's true for Moses, it's true for me, and it's true for you as well. He was the leader of God's chosen people, and he led Israel out of captivity and to the edge of the promised land, to the land of their ancestors. He literally was going to lead God's people into the land that God had promised them. That is an incredibly important work. Yet God wanted Moses' obedience and trust in him more than that. So God decided to let someone else lead the Israelites into the promised land. In light of an eternal, all-powerful God, our promised lands are not that important. So Moses, he kept on leading this rebellious, grumbling group of people, the nation of Israel, for the next 20 years, with the hope of the promised land taken away from him. The question is why? Why did he keep leading this people? How did he do it? What was his motivation? What was his goal? What was his dream? What was he working towards? And I believe there is only one thing left that he was working towards. One thing that could have kept him on mission, kept him on track. Which brings me to the second observation that I had after hearing this story. Leading Israel into the land of Canaan was not Moses' ultimate hope and dream. Intimacy with God was. Leading Israel into the land of Canaan was not Moses' ultimate hope and dream. Intimacy with God was. Moses had it right, and the same should be true with us. Our true and real promised land is intimacy with Jesus. Our true promised land is intimacy with Jesus. Our promised land is not contained in anything or person or accomplishment that you can find in this world. Our promised land is knowing and growing in intimacy with Jesus. Knowing Jesus is our promised land. Learning more about his love for us is our promised land. Growing in our desire to love him more is our promised land. Allowing him to satisfy every longing and desire in our heart is our promised land. Giving him our deepest hurts and our most urgent needs is our promised land. Letting our relationship with him be our only hope in this life is our promised land. Our promised land is intimacy with Jesus. My life was radically changed when I entered into a Christ-centered and had a Christ-centered community and encountered Jesus as a freshman at Iowa State University. I had 4 intense years of engineering school and an intense spiritual growth on the campus of Iowa State University. I love ISU. It became a dream of mine to end up someday as a Chi Alpha worker at the Iowa State campus. I spent 4 years of preparation to get ready in the marketplace to enter into ministry. I moved my family after we just bought we got asked to come to Iowa State 1 month after we bought our house in Minnesota. And so we moved our family from Minnesota. I quit my job as an engineer to go to Ames, Iowa. And one of the deepest desires I have in my heart is to see revival sweep across the campus of Iowa State University, to see tens of thousands of college students encounter Jesus, to give their lives to him, to be filled with the Holy Ghost and sent out to every corner of the world. But even if all of those things were to happen in the exact way I want them to, do you know what the truth is? Intimacy with Jesus is far better. And even if all those things were taken away from me and never ever happened, you know what still is the truth? Intimacy with Jesus is far better. Think of all those things that you are setting your hopes in, all those things that you think will satisfy you, all those dreams and desires that you think will bring you joy. Intimacy with Jesus is far better. Our promised land is intimacy with Jesus. And even deeper so with me, as I've entered into ministry and I've been a part of Chi Alpha for the last 6 months, I've had this statement. I've heard it said many different ways and many different times, but it's been this gut level conviction for me that I want to share with you. See, for me and what I do every day, much of it is intangible. I'm working with people. I'm spending time with them. I'm preparing messages. You can't quantify. I'm an engineer. You can't quantify how good a message was. Like no one throws up scorecards. Maybe you guys will, but no one does. So what I have to do is I have to go to God and say, Lord, you have to do this. Do the impossible in my life. Do this thing that is impossible without you. Do the supernatural in Chi Alpha. And often he does. And honestly, for me, that's a good thing. I need to rely on the power of God. But I've heard this statement, and it hits to the heart, and I want to share it with you. God is not a means to an end. He is not a means to Chi Alpha exploding and revival on campus. He's not a means to my personal promised lands coming true or your personal promised lands coming true. He is not a means to an end. He is the glorious, blessed end himself. God is not the means to our specific dream. He's not the means to our specific outcome that we're seeking. He's not the means to our happiness. He's not even the means to our deepest level of satisfaction. No, he is the very end himself. There's no greater place for us to arrive, no greater destination for us to get to. There is no greater end. He is our promised land. And this is what I believe is the great opportunity of 2021. As the world chases its own various version of promised lands, the world chases the promised land of everyone being in perfect health, or the new utopia with new political leaders, or everyone experiencing the exact same level of outcomes, perfect and equal outcomes. For us, our opportunity is to step deeper into the promised land of intimacy with Jesus. So today, I implore you to step deeper into the promised land of intimacy with Jesus. Jesus is not a means to an end. Jesus is the glorious, blessed end. So I'm going to invite the worship team to come back up. And I want to close this service in a couple of ways. And so you guys, if you guys could bow your heads and close your eyes, I just want to ask for a response. I know that might be weird, but just bow your head, close your eyes. Just want an opportunity for some privacy. But I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to be here before you today and extend an opportunity for those of you who maybe have never given their life to Jesus, or you have given your life to Jesus, but you've walked away from him and you're no longer in relationship with him. I want to give you an opportunity to enter into the promised land of relationship and intimacy with Jesus. The good news of Jesus for you today is that we are all broken, fallen people, all fallen short of the glory of God. Yet Jesus didn't want us to be separated from him forever. And so he decided to step down from heaven, to put clothes on, to enter into this world as a baby, which was Christmas. That's what Christmas is about. He entered this world as a baby, lived life like us, was a carpenter for 30 years. He lived a perfect life that no one else could live. And then after 30 years, he decided to submit himself to death on a cross, so that the sins of the world could be poured out on the perfect sacrifice of his perfect life. And then 3 days later, he rose from the grave, defeated sin, hell, and the grave, and invited us into a relationship with him and the Father. And so this morning, if you are here and you want to give your life to Jesus, you want to enter into the promised land of knowing him, of making him Lord of your life and asking for forgiveness of your sins, I want to give you the opportunity. So if you're here this morning, would you raise your hand? I would love to pray for you. Is there anyone out there who wants to raise their hand? Yeah, that's awesome. Come on. You guys can put your hands down. And if you're joining this online and you couldn't raise your hand, you can pray like this in your heart. When you respond by raising your hand, it's not, that's not a miracle. That's not a crazy act. What it is, it's just symbolic of what's happening on the inside. So pray in your heart like this. Jesus, I thank you that you are better than anything else in this world. That you came and died for my sins. And so this morning, I make a decision to make you Lord of my life. To ask for forgiveness of my sins. To believe that you are Lord and that you were raised from the grave. Be Lord of my life. I want to live for you. In Jesus' name, amen. For the rest of us, I want us all to stand up as a church. And I want to pray a prayer of blessing over you guys. As 2020, we're 3 days into this. We've got another 362 days to go. But pray a prayer of blessing over you guys. That this would be the year that you step into deeper intimacy with Jesus. Into what is your true and real promised land. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you so much for Creekside Church. Lord, that this is your body that you died for. That this is the people that you love. Lord, I thank you that their promised land is not housed in anything this world can offer them. There's no way that this world could ever really be what you are to us, our true and real promised land. So Lord, for the year 2021, I pray a prayer of blessing over Creekside Church. Lord, I pray a prayer of spiritual hunger that would sweep across this body, of this, just an intense gut level, spirit level, soul level desire to grow in their relationship with you. Lord, I pray for each person in this room, they'd have encounters with you, Holy Spirit, unlike anything they've experienced in the past. Lord, that when they're at home in their prayer closets or they're driving in the car and they're praying and they're calling out to you, Lord, they would experience relationship with you like they never have before. Lord, I pray they would be able to enter into the promised land of enjoying you. You are not a means to our end. You are the glorious end. And so, God, we thank you for that this morning. And I pray that you would bless Creekside Church. In Jesus' name, amen.